Hi, my name is Robert Chelle with Chelle Law, and I'm an attorney that assists veterinary associates with employment contract and independent contractor agreement issues. Today I'm going to talk about veterinary schedule and call issues. So what should go in your contract when it comes to your schedule, and then what should be in the contract when it comes to call. All right, so first let's take schedule. I think many veterinary associates are surprised at the lack of specificity when it comes to their schedule and their contract. I think the employer most likely does this on purpose. From the employer side, they want as much flexibility as possible to schedule the veterinary associate based upon the needs of the practice. Whereas from the veterinary associate side, you want to know specifically, these are the days I'm going to work, these are the hours I'm going to work, maybe the maximum amount of time you'll have to spend in the clinic. And so there's kind of always a push and pull as far as what needs to go in there. The reason why the employer doesn't want to put specifics in the contract normally is in case it changes down the road. They don't want to have to create a contract amendment every time your schedule changes. Now, there can be language put in there that allows for that flexibility, but what I would suggest that you do from the veterinary associate perspective is make sure that the employer doesn't have the unilateral ability to change your contract whenever they want. It needs to have some kind of language that just says, these are the initial days worked, hours worked, shifts worked, whatever your schedule is going to be. It should be listed in the contract. And then it should also say, any changes to the schedule need to be, mutually agreed upon by both parties. You just don't want the employer to be able to, kind of jerk you around as far as when you're working or not. Starting a job at a clinic where maybe they are not open on Saturdays, and then after a month or two, they do start providing care on Saturdays. And then they're going to say, okay, well, now we're going to have you work every Saturday. Well, that's, maybe some people like to do that. Most of the veterinary associates I deal with would not. So you just want to make certain that you have the ability to say yes or no if they're going to change your schedule. All right, next, as far as call goes, I don't think call's that big of a deal for most veterinarians. If you're working in a hospital or urgent care, generally it's just not an issue at all. Whereas if you're in a small animal, maybe a single vet-owned clinic or something like that, it could be more of an issue. So it should be spelled out in the contract too. How much call you have to take, when you're on call, do you have to come in? I find clinics that board animals have more issues with this than others. I'd say it's probably hit or miss whether a small animal clinic does boarding. But if there is, then there needs to be language in the contract that says, all right, who is responsible for any of the animals that are being boarded, who has to come in if there's an issue. It just needs to be specific as far as what your call duties are. You don't want to be, on call 24/7. That makes no sense as a veterinary associate. So all of these things need to be specific, and you can't take the word of the employer and say, oh, you know what, we'll figure it out, or we'll work it out once you start, that type of thing. No, this is the time before you sign the contract is the time to work out those details, not after you sign the contract and are obligated to work for them. Advocate for yourself, advocate for your schedule, advocate for getting the language into the contract. It will save a lot of headaches down the road. Okay, that's a little bit about veterinarian schedule and call responsibilities. If you have any questions about your employment contract or independent contractor agreement, feel free to contact my law firm at the information listed below in the description. And I appreciate you watching the video. All right, thanks. Take care.